Today, we're back with another breakdown episode. We're going to talk about, I think, at the time, my favorite draft pick just because of the value that I perceived as value at the time, and that was selecting Miles Frazier out of LSU on day 3, so let's get right into it. This was the player for me that I loved in terms of value. He ended up as a top 10 tier offensive lineman for me before the draft started. He was starting capable in the NFL, so I thought that he would go higher than he ultimately did. I did understand that there was maybe some schematic concerns in the sense of like maybe certain teams wouldn't love some of the versatility. They might want someone that they feel is a little bit more athletic as just a mover alone, so maybe that takes them off their radar a little bit potentially. He's also not the youngest prospect either. This is a 5-year senior, transferred from Florida International to LSU, spent 3 years there, but he's played a ton. Like, there's a lot of durability. He's played a ton in college, so he's had a lot of reps. And Christian Mahogany, just for an example, was 23 years old, 23 and a half years old, I believe, when we drafted him as well. So we've seen this before. He could be a starter in the NFL, but two, I also thought that he was similar in terms of play style because I'm a Lions fan. I always find comparisons to Lions players. Before we drafted him, I thought that he was similar to Kevin Zeitler. I thought that his style, the way that he's built as an offensive lineman, overcome what could be perceived as weaknesses, but they're not really weaknesses, but the way that he just makes himself play a little bit faster than you would expect. He reminded me a lot of Kevin Zeitler. Miles Frazier could ultimately potentially have a door open to starting this year. I mean, it mainly seems like it's going to be competition with Graham, Mahogany as well, like maybe there's competition there, and potential tackle flexibility because he has played some offensive tackle going back to college. It's not like Ratledge where it's like one position. He's played a little bit of offensive tackle, so his first couple seasons were at FIU. He was a 3-star high school recruit, transferred to LSU for the final 3 seasons of his college career, and he began things majority as a left guard. He started and played 9 games as a left guard in 2022 and 3 games as a right guard in 2022, as well as 1 game at right tackle that season. In 2023, he settled into the right guard role. 2024, he also was the right guard a majority of the time. He played 1 game at right tackle. So there's been a little bit of flexibility that we've seen, getting maybe a little bit of reps at both. There's some cross-training that can go on there. He also has the build for that as well, to absolutely have some cross-training. At 6'5" and a half, 6'0", 317 pounds, while also carrying really solid arm length, just under 33-inch arms. This is a player that definitely has measurables to bring some flexibility in terms of alignment, and I think that he utilizes his length really well. He looks very lengthy for an interior lineman. The Lions also have a tendency to draft interior offensive linemen that are a little bit taller, but he is a player that has been able to make it work. Now, there are issues that show up with playing too tall in a lot of different ways, and we'll talk about that, but it hasn't been overly concerning as I don't know if this is going to work at guard because he's just too tall on the inside. I think he shows enough bend and enough flexibility truly to kind of overlook some of those issues. Testing-wise, it was fine across the board. They tested really well in terms of the explosion scores, a 31-inch vertical, the 900 broad jump, smaller hands, ran at an average type of level. So with that being said, let's get right into it. Let's talk about Miles Frazier, and I first want to talk about the movement skills. I want to talk about the reactive athleticism, which from an interior offensive lineman, as we know, is incredibly important. It is for a tackle as well. You may have more ground to cover, but for an interior offensive lineman, getting off the ball quickly, being in a spot where you can position and win early, you got to fly off the ball, and that's one constant theme of Miles Frazier is getting off the line really fast, exploding off the line of scrimmage as a run blocker and as a pass protector, getting to his spots very quickly and early. For me, I ended up with a good grade overall in terms of the reactive athleticism for Miles Frazier, and we're going to talk about that, but the fieriness out of his stance, the timing that he plays with off the ball, those two things play in it consistently. It always shows up. It's kind of like a defensive end that has a good get off. He has that from an offensive lineman, very quick into pass sets. It also opens some flexibility as well, different pass sets you can ask him to utilize. Now, maybe we didn't see as much of the flexibility like going back to college and what he was actually asked to do with LSU, but you can look at some of the ability to maybe jump set some guys potentially. Like, you can see the flexibility there to get off the ball, get hands on guys quickly, the 45-degree sets that he can take as well, and you just see the ability to launch off the line of scrimmage, and it opens a lot of run game flexibility for a guy that's not, again, the best runner. He definitely can cover some ground. He does it with some burstiness early. I think that vertical shows up, the ability to quickly cover some short area ground, which opens up tons of schematic flexibility as well. I thought that that would be a concern for some teams heading into the draft with Miles Frazier, and maybe it was, but I ultimately think that he's shown the ability to play in pretty much every run scheme you could throw on his plate, and he's been able to be successful to some extent. And I don't ever think that he really looked like, oh, he's not going to be able to move well enough. I think it shows up the most actually when he has to get up to the second level, specifically on like the backside of plays, or even point, if you get him out to the second level in space and he has to redirect with guys, that's where it shows up more. Like Jahad Campbell, I thought, gave him some problems up to the next level, but specifically on the line of scrimmage, he looked very comfortable in pretty much any run scheme that you could have asked of him. I also like that there is some looseness. So we're going to talk about the flexibility, but I have that to average, slightly above average. There is real looseness in his game. You'll see it as a puller. I love the angles that he takes the puller. He plays really tight to the line of scrimmage. He's adjustable. He's adaptable in those spots. He plays with the balance. Another key for me in pass protection and as a run blocker is keeping his feet connected. He tends to play with really connected feet like a good cornerback would, where it allows him to redirect with real balance. You'll also see this in terms of the contact balance that he has as well, but he can fill run lanes. He can work between offensive linemen as well because of the ability to quickly redirect, step inside, not necessarily get skinny, but redirect very quickly with some good balance. You love the positioning. You'll see it in slide protection, the way that he quickly gets into his spot, quickly gives supports, recognizes it off the line. We'll get to his awareness. I think it's one of the stronger aspects of his game is just knowing where he's supposed to get to. That will show up, but the reactiveness shows the ability to beat defensive linemen to their spot, right? He can just halt guys before really get started in terms of players getting upfield, and I remember coming into this, I thought that was such a key strength for Miles Frazier was he could win early. He could win early on reps, and I think that we did see that it's still a ton when going through all of these games. Lateral movement, the ability to stay square, this is where I think his athleticism shows the most. He's able to work flat down the line of scrimmage, relatively square in, say, wide zone plays, on the play side of wide zones. Now, the problem will be is, one, his footwork can be a little bit messy. Number two, he doesn't always play leveraged in these spots. He could tend to get a little bit upright, which hurts him a little bit. But in terms of just being able to cover ground laterally, it's absolutely adequate, and it shows up for like wide zone plays where he can stay square, and that also helps him climb to the next level, show real burst there, and it doesn't lead to a lot of false movement. Same thing as a puller, does not a lot of false movement as a puller either. Now, there could be a little small hitch to me on entry. You'll see a little bit of a lunging there. That twitch doesn't always show up as often. Quickly settles himself down in space. You'll see this as a puller. He breaks himself down, controlled footwork. He settles his feet, breaks himself down to work into contact, which shows up to the movement, and he's pretty light on his feet for short area movement, right? Whether that's gap to gap, whether that's, okay, I'm here and I'm going to redirect. Let me take away this stunt rusher, which he's really good at. And at his best, we'll see Miles trust his footwork and trust his feet and not launch himself looking for contact. And you'll notice with the hand usage, he has a really good sense of when he can punch, but trusting his footwork and trusting his lateral ability to move. There's a lot of minimizing false movement, which again, for a guy that's 320 pounds at 6'5.5", that would seemingly be a big issue. It doesn't really show up as an issue because he's super balanced as a mover. Wide zone on the backside get off is consistent. He plays with really tight angles in those spots. He's going to get hip to hip with the center. He's going to get hip to hip with the tackle very quickly, more so with the center, but he's going to get hip to hip, close off airspace, help himself by getting himself in positions where he can win early, which makes him look like he's playing faster throughout the entirety of the rep. I love the play side quickness. You can run behind him on zone plays. He can get out, cut guys off, really get into a spot where he can hold his gap leverage and attempt to seal blocks, attempt to shoot blocks into the next level, hedge and climb. He can attempt to do those things, but mainly with that first level block is his ability to quickly get himself to position for that. As I mentioned, this is a player with good reactive athleticism, not elite, but it's a plus. The 45-degree sets, I think as he does that, can be a little bit limited in terms of actually the speed that he covers with depth. Short areas there, but the range can be a little bit questionable how much ground he can actually cover very quickly, which would give me some questions at tackle as well. So ultimately, I think it's a plus here to anchor/play strength. This is where there's things that you really love here, which is the play strength category. The technical aspect, sometimes you get some hit and miss, but ultimately, and a lot of it stems back to, again, footwork, where ultimately for footwork, for me, I ended up with a below average grade. It's one of my lower grades for him. But in terms of the ability to play with a lot of strength, that's noticeable. And you're going to find with Miles Frazier, he is not just powerful. He doesn't just have a powerful body and a really, really well-built frame for the NFL. He looks like a thick NFL guard, which plays in well as a 5-year player. Like, you would kind of expect that, but he is built like an NFL player, but he's got the demeanor to tie along with it. He's got some nastiness to him. He's got some finisher to him, and you'll see this in pass protection, which I think is where it shines the most. When he gives himself an opportunity to finish guys in pass protection, he does. When he gets in your chest and he can just run you backwards, he'll run guys upfield into the ground in pass protection sets, which I think says it all specifically. What I do like here in terms of that play strength and the anchor ability is that when he stays square, he can redirect pretty well, which helps him with his anchor when he does stay square to the line of scrimmage. That isn't always the case, but it can when he does stay square. He also has the quick feet to quickly anchor, short area anchor, quickly settle himself down. I think that he shows some real ankle strength, and this shows up to some of the flexibility to quickly create an anchor where he can really lock out his hips. He's super powerful in the core. allows him to quickly create those short area anchors, but it also allows him to really settle down off his ankles in very small spaces and kind of just hold ground. It also taps into his contact balance, where he's able to kind of recover, get himself into some weird spots where he can ultimately settle himself down. Again, if the footwork's more consistent there and he stays square, it's great, but sometimes that's not always the case. Hopping his weight can be a problem at times here as well. Now, I actually thought by the end of the season, Oklahoma was a strong game for him, dropping weight a little bit, but really just entry positioning. But you'll see this on like double teams. Doesn't always seemingly drop his weight incredibly well to actually create movement. He tends to play a little bit upright. It feels like sometimes he's just kind of collapsing himself over top of blocks. So it leads to not getting the mauling sensation as consistently, where it's like, oh, he's going to pry guys out of gaps. Like, you don't always feel that. And I think on double teams, it shows the most. Combo blocks, where you just don't feel that consistently. Sometimes he'll slide off blocks. Sometimes he comes in like he's hugging guys and he's falling over top. Other times he doesn't feel like he's dropping his weight and actually driving through consistently. And you'll see that where he's kind of just lunging and just wrapping himself over blocks, which tends to be a little bit of a problem. I do like, though, that he can drop that anchor quickly. He can do it in a lot of different ways, as long as the footwork stay wide as well. This is another problem that he has as a people mover will season sustain. He can tend to let his base get skinny. When he stays wide and square, that's where all this tends to kind of come together. But that upright gather can be a little bit of an issue. Hips flip in terms of being able to retreat. That creates a soft initial anchor. When he declares his hips a little bit too early, kind of like a cornerback as well, he can tend to declare his hips a little bit early. I think some of it's some of the lack of being able to create fast depth or create a ton of depth within those strides in some of his pass sets, which is why he thrives at, like, I want to get hands on you and shut this thing down. Cover. He can still recover, but in terms of ranginess, that's where I think it's a little bit limited. So his best game is constantly like getting hands on early, but he plays with patience, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in a second. He's got real shock on contact, real shock in his hands, a real explosive entry points, head-on posture as a pass pro, where he'll kick his butt out, lock himself out, and he'll create real force. When he gets in cleanly, you can see him settle himself down. Very powerful puller. He breaks himself down, controls his footwork into those pulling attempts. Doesn't always play with the best bend in these spots to really sink under pads, but he does break himself down, typically plays wide, and I think he finds a lot more success than you would expect there. The biggest issue for me actually comes from the way that he enters into contact. He does that really well. He's a very sound puller. No movement that just feels unnecessary. He's firm when he's square. He's got enough bend to drop his pads and create an anchor. Stand up a little bit upright when he's retreating in his base. Steps don't always feel that smooth. It feels like he's just kind of walking himself backwards, and it doesn't feel like that's going to translate well. It's going to create some softness on his initial anchor. It's going to allow guys to get him on his heels and just get an edge, because he doesn't always play firm, or he's kind of just stepping backwards for second and third effort spots, or when he has to take on a stunt rusher, something along those lines. It's not a clean initial entry. When he's clean initial entry, it's typically he's just going to shut down reps, but later things can be a little bit of a problem. Hedge blocks, he doesn't constantly clear guys out, which to me is more so of an entry thing. So ultimately, I think that to me is slightly above average to good in terms of the anchor / play strength that he plays with. I think you'll notice the play strength's a lot faster, but he can definitely anchor, especially if he can do it early. Now, that body control for me is the spot where I was kind of weird. I went slightly below average, but there's enough recovery ability here where I think you could just call this an average grade, which is really strong. I remember with Mahogany, this was one of my lower grades. Well, I think I had him average too. So a lot of the grades seem to be relatively similar to where I had Mahogany, and they were both day 3 picks, and Mahogany's looking pretty good. So, hey, it worked out. And this was my big concern with Mahogany. I actually don't feel as concerned with this as much, because I think so much of this can be cleaned up. I really do. I think so much of the body control, staying on his feet, not being on the ground, can be cleaned up within his game with some tweaks. But ultimately, for me, the big issue that I'm going to mention a ton is the lunging forward. It is the fact that he launches himself into contact, and that's where he'll lack some patience. When he decides to go, he kind of just launches forward. That's a problem. His forward posture on jump sets can put him in some trouble as well when he's not in a smooth, like, okay, I'm going to jump set, but I'm going to keep my, posture back. No, he'll start to kind of lean forward. Then if the hands aren't there and they don't connect cleanly, guys will kind of just roll and get an edge. Now he's forced to recover. So those show issues. Base to get unbalanced, which tends to be a problem as well within his footwork. It's just not consistent throughout the rep when he has to redirect. His posture gets a little bit upright. He will overset run blocks, which is a big problem for me. Sometimes it's that first step get off. He has a plan of where he wants to get to. It's really nice because it allows him to square up blocks, because he's so fast off the ball that he can read it. He can read the defense tackle where they're going and then play off of that. But there's other occasions where he'll launch off the ball into where he wants to get to, and the defender's not there. And you'll see them just kind of sidestep. I think of Walter Nolan gave him some problems here. Now he's top tier in this class, but like lateral quickness guys like that, which you will find in the NFL, not everywhere, but you will find them, that has to be a little more precise. Kind of like an assuming nature, I think, led to some problems where he would just get into spots where it's like, this isn't going to be effective. Oversetting can be a problem. Putting himself in awkward positions where you're just watching it like, man, if he would have just came in with a better angle to approach here, he could have sealed this off much better and not allowed this thing, a guy to cross his face. There's way too many cross-face opportunities they notice, especially as a run blocker. Some patience, as I said, where he can kind of get hunched over as a run blocker. He does launch into contact when he recognizes where he wants to go, and to me, that disallows any kind of redirect. Short area quickness becomes a problem, and defensive lineman can set him up off of that as well. Legitimate body control issues, as you're noticing here. His pads can rise a little bit within his redirect as well, but there's big positive. Like I said, breaking down his footwork in space, loose hips to kind of roll over blocks and create real power through his hips, which is incredibly noticeable. As a pass protector, the way that he can kind of just lift guys up, and as a run blocker when he can roll over blocks. He's relatively balanced within his mirror as well. One, he can stall a little bit because you'll see with his punches, he can get to a spot where they're not always consistent, so he can tend to stall a little bit when his base gets a little bit out from underneath him. That tends to be a problem. It stalls some of that true like downhill mauling ability, and again, some of that comes back to declaring his hips. So I think it's slightly below average, but you could maybe go average because there's recovery flexibility here. I don't think these are issues that can't be corrected. I think a lot of it can be. It's just right now it can be a little bit inconsistent. So one of my lower grades right now for him, I have him as an average grade. I put him right in the middle, average right now as a run blocker. A lot of the issues that I just mentioned and things that need to be kind of just cleaned up. The big positive, though, is there is real run scheme versatility with this player. Like, maybe there's certain things you don't want to constantly ask him to do, like, hey, can you go climb up to that second-level linebacker and connect with him every time? Like, that's not going to be his game consistently. But is he athletic enough to play on the backside of plays and play with right angles? Yeah, as long as he paces himself consistently. And does he have enough on the front side to seal guys off? Yes, as long as he uses his footwork right so he stays leveraged. As long as you dial in a few things, there's so much run schematic flexibility that's super noticeable that gets me really excited. I don't like when he ducks his head on the into contact. That's a big issue, and that can throw off body control as well. Like we talked about kind of lunging in where he'll duck his head. Doesn't always seem to actually see his target. Some of that's also just waist bending where you're not dropping your knees, so he's just ducking his head and he's kind of bending over to try to find contact. That consistency has to be better. I think that he can bend enough, but it's very posture reliant. Just the little issues there can cause problems depending on who he's matched up with. I do like, though, that he has some build-up speed. We talk about the burst that he had. He's explosive on his entry as a puller. You'll notice that he creates some drive. His feet are immediate to run. He gets contact and he's running. He's trying to roll off of that. He's trying to finish the rep and continue it beyond just initial connection. His entry, to me, can be a little bit of a problem because he'll come out from under his toes, which again can throw off some body control issues as well. But he has the hips to seal blocks. He has the looseness there. He has the power within his hips. He has the core strength. He can square up blocks. And when he does, he plays some real burst in the entry, which opens up a lot of flexibility and just some people moving flexibility as well. I don't like when he's leaning over guys instead of creating real force through the ground where he's kind of just leaning over to create movement. That's a problem. Making himself lean to create movement is not going to be effective. That needs to be just more consistent to me. Sliding over his rolling hips is a problem. We saw Florida where he was going against big Desmond Watson. This would happen a lot. Way too many times against Florida. Probably one of the worst games I saw as a run blocker. Just sliding off of blocks. And too often he's just head down, sliding off, weird entry points.
You'll see his run blocking awareness, so we'll talk about this a little bit more in a second, but you'll also notice that he doesn't consistently clear out, and you can see that he comes in high, doesn't always drop his pads and drop his weight incredibly well. In those entry points, he has enough power to just kind of maul guys over, but it's not going to be as consistent as you want against bigger defenders in the NFL due to some of the lack of just consistency.
Against bigger guys that you can't just maul and push around and control them, you have to be sound. He wasn't sound, and he's sliding off of blocks way too often in a game like that. He squeezes those combo blocks. He's a real finisher as a run blocker, and he needs to close ground. To me, one of the big technical things is just close ground before you go for entry more consistently. I get it, the second level guys are a little bit quicker, so it's a little bit more difficult to ask of that, but I think too often at the line, he's not closing ground before he's just kind of I'm going after it, and that's a problem. If he would just be a little bit more patient to actually close, position himself properly, and then get contact, I think it would be better. He tends to kind of shoot, and when he shoots his hands, while there's patience there, when he does really shoot his hands in run blocker, he tends to, his body follow. He doesn't shoot his hands and stay behind. He tends to follow it as a run blocker, and it just gets too over-aggressive. He gets out from underneath himself, and that puts him in some tough spots. You'll see as a down blocker, the position can be a little bit messy. He's a little bit inaccurate downhill, but he can hit wide zone spots.
A couple different looks here. First off, as a polar, it's the ability to break down. You see him settling with a wide base. There's some control there, even to turn these tight corners. And then as a zone blocker to lead the way, you see the active vision as he's working to the second level. Then just the fluidity to bounce from block to block, wide base, balance, control.
A lot of run game flexibility. It's average right now, but again, real things that can be cleaned up. There's flexibility there. And then as a pass protector, this was an area where I'm slightly below to about average. I'm kind of in a very similar category here. I think you could go average. The real thing that's going to prop this grade up for me is going to be the separation of the next grade, because the next grade's pretty darn strong, and I think that's what helps him so much here, and as a run blocker too. And this is why you want to bet on guys like this. He does, to me, need to play with more consistency and depth. When he's kind of dealing with different rushers from different spots, he's very active with awareness. His depth can be inconsistent. He tends to play a little bit shallow. He lets guys kind of get an edge, and he doesn't put himself in a great spot to actually get back on the play. He allows guys to put him in some tough positions. Now he can pick up blocks and create quick depth, quick drop step to create a firm foundation on contact. Here comes a blitzer, bam, and he just lights those dudes up. Like you'll see when oncoming blitzer, or he comes stunt rusher and he's ready for it. I mean, he just rocks those dudes. There was one this past, I think it was Oklahoma, and I'm like, oh my goodness. Like if you watch Landon Jackson, he played a really strong game against him this past year. Like he's had some really good games. That was a player I was like, oh my, that was nasty. He's had some of those. So when he's firm, you really do notice it. But the depth just as a whole can be a little bit better, I think, within the offensive line, maintaining that horseshoe a little bit. He will get a little bit skinny on take on, which is as a run blocker to sustain. Those two things can tend to be a little bit of a problem in pass protection as well. But he can create pretty fast depth in terms of short area depth. He can do that pretty quickly. So oncoming, quick step back, quick drop step, boom, I'm into contact. He can do that pretty quickly, which is nice, that short area movement. Squares up the pass rusher really early on the play, so he does a nice job of kind of taking away paths and forcing them to redirect constantly. The drop step can be tall and skinny, but he can do it quickly. Shoulders get a little bit turned. The upper body gets turned. Not always playing square to the line of scrimmage, as mentioned as well. Retreating pretty high in his redirect, right? Playing just a little bit too upright. That's going to slow you down. Feet stay connected, which I do like. That allows for a real redirect, real balance. I love watching that aspect of it as well. A little bit over-aggressive as well as a pass protector, but he's smooth in his redirect. He's smooth in his ability to connect with guys. He's got the hips to deal with it. He's got the hips to redirect. He's got the short area movement skills. He's got the looseness to his game. Slightly below average right now for me, but he can win very quickly. I'm translating that more so to the NFL, but early wins are very noticeable. It's a second and third effort where little things I think could really improve this ability as well. But man, to be a finisher as a pass protector like he is, it feels kind of rare. He is that. Now the category that I love is awareness. The feel of this player. It's great. I could argue this is even stronger. It's great right now, right? Maybe some depth and pacing could be improved, but in terms of just seeing everything, he sees everything, it feels like. Very fast to drop off, very fast to give support, very fast to step over in slide protection, very quickly recognizes games up front, plays with an excellent pace there, knows exactly where he wants to get to next. He always seemingly has a plan as a pass protector and a little bit as a run blocker as well. He's smooth passing off stunts. He's very quick, pass pro support, and in slide protection, things like that. He's a really smart backside zone blocker to wall guys off. If he gets out quickly, the guy just kind of steps behind. Once he gets upfield, he'll slip around. He'll wall that thing off. That way he can't get back into the backfield. And then you'll see it as a run blocker too. Like, okay, on the backside, he's targeting that linebacker, so he knows what his next move is. That linebacker jumps outside the tackle box. He'll see that and redirect to it. Like, he has that kind of vision where he seemingly sees everything. He has a great feel for what's happening around him, just kind of seeing adapting targets and seeing things move, quickly moving to the next block. I love all that. Tight angles into entry, tight angles hip to hip with other blockers as well. He's got a really good plan, which allows him to be a finisher. I think that his awareness is great. I think this is going to translate. Now, a couple of the last categories that I do want to touch on. Hand usage. I went slightly above average. He doesn't have big hands, but he does have some length, and that does play into it as well as the shock in his hands. He's got a pretty fast two-handed punch. He's very ready with his hands. You're going to see that early. He's very ready with his hands, which those two things tied together does help. That explosive punch, ready hands, powerful. He can extend his length, utilize that length really to his advantage. But I love the most is that he ties along with it patience. When you watch him, you don't really feel a guy that's completely impatient as a pass protector. You feel patience. And wait till you're an arm length until I can really make this strike happen. He doesn't feel like he's reaching in pass protection that often. He typically feels like he's waiting for the opportunity, but when he's going to strike, he's going to be able to land contact. He doesn't feel just all over the place, just striking, throwing punches. He's a puncher, much more than a grabber, but he's typically pretty sound in that sense of really having a good sense of like, okay, I have an opportunity here, let me go for it. Now, the entry can be a little bit hit and miss, coming in a little bit wide at times, but for the most part, he plays really low. His hands don't play that high that often, and he has a really good sense of how far away he is from the defender before he decides to throw a punch. The length plays into this. It's fantastic. Big thing for me is when he does punch, You want to see, especially in some of those short area situations, as a run blocker for me, I want to see him pull it back. I want to see at times where he's looking for strikes and looking for connection where he will pull back and he's not just lunging forward. That's a problem. He has a really good sense of when to strike as a pass protector, but at times I think he does have to know when to, like, okay, pull this back. Okay, that's not there. Maybe the opportunity isn't here. I don't need to strike right now, but he kind of just still does, and it puts him in a pretty tough spot. Hurts his recovery a little bit as well. He keeps his hands down when he's retreating. Now, the problem can be there is you got to have your hands ready, but the positive is he plays really low. Like, he's going to get under your pads, he's going to fire under your chest. You'll see this as a run blocker. Occasionally, sometimes he'll get a little bit wide and he'll kind of hug guys, which is, to me, just a poor entry. But as a pass protector, especially when he has you square, he does a really good job of hand shoot low, hand shoot right on the chest. He's not getting up on shoulders that often. He's in a pretty good spot. Wide, yes, his drag hand really well. He uses both hands really well as a run blocker and a pass protector on the move. Upper body can lead to some missed punches, and you'll see this just by having an inaccurate upper body being a little bit declared. Struggle a little bit to adapt his hands to actually find the chest. He'll play it low, but he can struggle to adapt. So I think late movements by D-lineman, he struggles to, like, okay, here it is. Oh, let me find this spot. Like, it doesn't always feel that clean. Instead, it kind of feels like he has a plan where he's going to put his hands, and if it gets knocked off, he just has to recover. It's not as much so like, oh, defense lineman's here, let me try to go here. You don't see that as much. It doesn't feel as adaptive immediately. It feels like it gets into, if that didn't connect, second effort. Let's see where we can go with. The way that he enters the run blocker, cleaning that up can also help as well. But he's got a very strong latch. He doesn't have big hands, man, but he latches on guys. They don't get away from him. He's got a really strong latch, and he gets his full body into it, which to me is the next category. In the last, well, two more, but the last, one of the most important ones, ability to sustain blocks. Right now, for me, I think he has a real ability to sustain blocks. I think he's good in this category. The leg drive, it's the continuous leg drive. It's active feet. He wants to run as soon as he gets into contact. When he gets locked down in pass pro, he'll try to run through those spots. Now, he can drive without being square, which is the biggest problem. He'll connect with blocks, and he'll try to run through the block without actually being square or positioning himself accurately as a run blocker, and then it just feels like he's kind of just running himself off the block. It's like, all right, he's just sliding himself off. Some of those, like, down blocking positions specifically, but he has the legs to run. He has the looseness to run, stay connected, work through connection. Strains without latch too, which I kind of mentioned, where it's like he's straining for just like, I want to create movement here and I want to stay connected and push this guy around, but he doesn't actually have a latch. He's just kind of all over the place. Downhill drive position could be less accurate, right? Getting downhill, driving guys out to play. That accuracy could do some work back to the entry points as well.
Now, we have seen him get stunned in his chest, and he has the ability to stay connected, but when he gets stunned, you can see that it limits the ability to get leg drive started, and then also, again, when he kind of gets to that lunging mode forward, when it's not creating drive through the hips, and instead he's just kind of leaning over the block, then you get some of the redirect issues, and all of a sudden, he's not landing cleanly, and he's losing blocks, and blown blocks happen fast.
Even if he gets knocked off, he stays connected. He shows contact balance. He stays within the play. Even when guys get in his chest, way too often, he lets guys get in his chest as a blocker. That's a problem. Like, he leaves that exposed. And like I said, he doesn't always adapt that well. So, okay, offensive lineman's coming towards his chest. He's just going to allow his hands then to just jump outside. Like, he doesn't always feel that adaptive. So, for me, and there's not like a finishing move you notice where it's like, oh, man, okay, he's kind of leaning over himself. Let me do something really crap. There's not a lot of craftiness to it, doesn't feel like. And even when he allows guys in his chest or gets knocked off, he stays within phase. He stays within the play. He stays connected to the guy. Will pop up in his sustain, which can also limit it, where he gets skinny, his base gets skinny. That limits him a little bit as well. Combo blocks quick, gets upfield. Sometimes I just feel like it's a little bit too slow of a process. Other times it doesn't feel that impactful, but I think the biggest thing is just being a little bit slow to actually get to the second level and give himself a real shot. Can be a little bit sluggish specifically, but he's got excellent core power. That's so noticeable. Like, this dude can just he can just pull guys over. I mean, he's super strong in the hips and within the core specifically. He's very strong in those spots. Bend is at a capable spot as well to be a sustained blocker, I think. It's just cleaning up some of that launching entry. And then finally, I'll wrap it with this. To me, the ability to get to the next level. Now, when you get him out like screens or you have him in space, you notice that, okay, he's not elite. He's not an elite runner. Like, you notice that pretty quickly. But what he does well is he plays with actual control out in space. Like, for him, it's like when he gets out there, he will break himself down. The problem is that he just can't connect with certain blocks, and that's super noticeable. So his pace has to be on point. A bit over-aggressive on backside angles, which puts him in a tough spot. You'll also see that what I like is his pace tends to adapt to the scheme. So depending on what he's asked to do, he'll really adapt it well. Like, okay, we're going inside zone. How do I want to pace this out? And you can see that he can find inside zone success. So there's a lot of flexibility. How do I want to pace this? When do I want to climb? There's a lot of pacing that adapts to the scheme. I got to pull. Okay, where are we pulling, right? Are we pulling through? Are we pulling outside? Like, how do I need to place? There's a really adaptive pace, I feel like, as a blocker to what the scheme is asking him to do, and he has control for that. He can turn the corner, but his speed in space is just a little bit limited. That's noticeable. His zone speed is also a little bit limited as well. Going to have to play just faster. That way, like I mentioned, that way he can be more consistent there. To have to play with better footwork. That way he can leverage leverage himself. Too often he's not playing leveraged when he's on the play side or he's hedging a block, and you're not getting any movement because he's not leveraged. He's kind of just standing up sideways, and like, this isn't going to work. So two things need to be dialed in there for more consistent success. A real upfield burst. He's got a closing burst to his game as well. Those two things are noticeable. Now, when you get him up to a linebacker, he's not going to consistently actually connect in those spots. He has enough looseness to stay attached when he does get attached, but he doesn't constantly attach with those guys, but he can definitely get up to those spots. Also needs to improve his posture in those positions as well. Again, like we saw off the line, but in the second level, like, you have to be sound with your posture to make sure you can actually connect with guys. He's not consistently sound. He's kind of all over the place in terms of the posture into blocks. Kind of feels like he's throwing himself at people. That's not going to work. He doesn't have the movement skills for that to consistently work. So for him, I think he just needs to dial into details. That way you can get him to the spot where you can overlook some of the limitations. But ultimately, I don't actually think there's that many limitations. I think he needs some things to be dialed in. He's an older prospect, yes, but this dude can play. He's scheme versatile. I think that he's a starting capable player. I would not be surprised if during the season he becomes a starter at guard. I think it's absolutely on the table. The flexibility is legit. I think in a pinch he actually could play tackle. I wouldn't want him there all the time, I don't think. But I think there's enough there. Footwork was below average for me, but the finishability is great. He's got very good power. That's super noticeable. He's got slightly above average range. He's very tough. He's got great toughness. Like I said, really the only knock I had with footwork was below average. That needs to be cleaned up. Run blocking and pass pro, in terms of technical aspects, are closer to average for me. Body control slightly below average, but I think the recovery is enough there, and I think you'll notice that when you watch him is that he can recover on blocks, but he's got enough athleticism, he's got more than enough power, and he can show an anchor in a lot of different ways. It's just making it work all different ways.